Ready? The House Government Operations Committee for March 27th is called to order. Madam Clerk, take the roll, please.
Representatives Bolso, Carr, Chisholm, Clemens, Crawford, Eldridge, Faison, Hakeem, Haynes, Himmer, Johnson, Jones, Kiesling, Kumar, Lafferty, Littleton, Martin, McCalman, Rudder, Vice Chairman Reedy, Chairman Reagan.
Here. Faison here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Committee members, before we begin, do we have personal orders? Vice Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And folks in the audience, those watching at home, let us all stand for a moment of silence for the Covenant Christian School and the chaos that's taking place and the sadness that we have today. Amen. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you probably know, that moment of silence is recognized. The current body count that we have is 7. 3 children, 3 adults, and the shooter, who was also an adult. At this point in time, they're not releasing more details of the investigation than that. But let's be mindful of those parents who've experienced a tremendous loss and the families of the others as well. With that said, do we have other personal orders? Seeing none, some housekeeping rules here. Item number 4, House Bill 1336 by Leader Camper is rolled 1 week. Item number 8, House Bill 1107 by Reagan is rolled 2 weeks. And that's that. We are now at item number 1 on our calendar, House Bill 322. We have a motion and a second, and Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman White and I stand before you on a bill that, until this morning, is an important bill, but I think is one that most of us talked about in concept because of tragedies and evil acts that occurred in other states. Today, it hit our community. We don't know the details yet of why anyone would go into a school and kill children. But I know this, I'm not leaving here this year. Do we do everything we can possibly do to help try to prevent that? This bill requires school security teams to do active shooter drills. This bill requires schools to keep their doors locked. This bill requires many things. You've all read it. It also provides for prevention through threat assessment teams. None of us know the details of what happened today. Not yet. I was asked at one point to consider rolling this bill, but I'm not wasting any more time between this bill and the House floor. I hope that you will support this bill today, and I hope that this will happen in a bipartisan manner. Those bullets that struck those kids today didn't have a partisan label on them. Those families are Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and they are hurting. No one should ever go through what they're going through today. And I'll admit it's a little tough to present this bill right now, but I could not in good conscience slow down even 1 second on a bill that could save lives. Mr. Chairman, with that, I stand ready for questions.
Members, you've heard an explanation of the bill before us. I have one name on the list already. Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is emotional time. We're going to be honest about that, Representative Lamberth, and so I hope you understand the emotion with which I'm going to say my statement. You stated that we don't know why the shooting occurred. You say that we're going to do everything we can to stop these shootings from happening again and again and again, but we know how it occurred. And this legislation does nothing to address the root of these issues, which is the proliferation of military-grade weapons
Representative Jones,
in our communities.
Representative Jones, if you have a question on the bill, make your question known. We do not need pontification, sir.
We have a right to make a statement, and for my
No, sir, you have a right to ask questions. Now, if you have a question of the sponsor, please ask it. If you have a prologue to your question, you may certainly put the prologue on it, but make it related to the bill, please, sir.
This is a prologue related to the bill because this happened in Nashville, where I represent. And just 2 weeks ago, members on the other side of the aisle told me there's no such thing as gun violence when we challenge this proliferation of guns in our communities. Children, this is the only nation this keeps happening in. That is not a coincidence. And so my question to the sponsor is, what steps does this bill take to address this woman who committed this act of violence, of this atrocity, used 2 AK-47s? What is this bill doing to address the root of these issues?
You're recognized, sir.
Behind every one of those inanimate objects that I know you hate so much is an evil person that chooses to use it in an inappropriate way, just like a drunk driver behind the wheel of a 3,000-pound vehicle going down the road that creates havoc. I understand that you want to focus on the item used. I want to focus on things that will actually ensure the safety of our children, like making sure that doors are closed, like making sure that security guards have the training they need, that making sure that they have the threat assessments to make our schools the most hardened possible target against any form of violence, no matter what weapon may be utilized. You may focus on pretend solutions that sound good from partisan standpoints, and yes, today is an emotional day. These are real solutions that will make a difference, and this is a very difficult bill to present right now. I would like to say just thank you for your comments. We can get in a back and forth right now, but I hope anyways that while there may be other solutions you would like to focus on, that these solutions, we can at least all agree on. That better training for security guards, better threat assessments against any school. If there's anyone anywhere on a social media site anywhere in the world that makes a threat or even a semi-threat against the school, it should be immediately investigated. We need personnel. We need individuals to be able to do that. These are real solutions. These are not made up political fights where they're focused on an inanimate object. These are focusing on the evil individuals that are doing this. And again, I understand it is a difficult day for any of us to discuss this bill. But if we wait a week, if we wait a day, if we wait an hour, it is furthering endangering children in this state by not having these type of real solutions in place. So yes, sir. Thank you for your comments. I would ask that we be careful not to get in just a back and forth today and over politicize an absolutely tragic situation.
Representative Jones, follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not about politicizing. This is about treating the grief of our community seriously. What would your bill do to prevent Uvalde? What would your bill do to prevent today's mass shooting? Putting locks on doors, having more security, that would do nothing to address what is the root cause, which is this proliferation of military-grade weaponry in our schools. This does not happen in any other nation. Can you name any other nation where they keep having school shootings, Representative Lambert? Can you name any other Western nation that this happens in? Can you give me an example?
The chair will intervene here. Sweden is certainly one, sir. They've had a mass school shooting of a significant number. However, please address the bill, sir.
What would this bill do to address today's mass shooting? How would this bill have been a preventative measure to the act of callousness that happened in Nashville?
You're recognized, sponsor.
This literally just happened. So as we go through this process, I'll be happy to answer that question at a later date. For today, what happened? I would recommend that we all grieve with these families, evaluate that situation when we know actual facts from the law enforcement officers that put themselves in danger to actually save lives today. So to ask that question today is entirely premature. But yes, I absolutely would love to have that discussion.
We'll come back to you. Representative Jones.
What would this bill do?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I give you one last follow-up, then we'll go to Representative Johnson. I'm sorry.
Thank you. What would this bill have done to address the situation in Uvalde, where this is a response to the mass shooting of those children? They had security in the schools. They had locks. So that was not enough. So how would this bill actually take seriously and address what happened a year ago, the same situation in another school?
You're recognized, sir.
Yes, sir. And thank you for asking that question. That is one that I can answer. So in that particular situation, there were multiple things that occurred, one of which was an unlocked exterior door. This requires all doors to be locked. It also includes that they must be checked on a regular basis. It includes threat assessments. It includes drills to ensure that, like what happened in Uvalde, when you have law enforcement officers that are on the scene that can go in, that they are trained to go in immediately and save lives. That's much of what this bill does, and it absolutely will save lives.
Representative Johnson, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess my question would be, I do believe that we need to have a plan. We need to have security in place, and we should make sure that everyone has a good plan. But I also believe that's probably one of the smallest things that we could do. I think that when it comes to addressing other issues in our community, making sure that people have access to affordable care, health care, which also means mental health care, and also making sure that we do what we can with common sense gun legislation. So what I would ask the sponsor, he is dedicated to this bill and making sure that we have school security plans in our schools, which I can agree with. But I hope that he is willing to work across the aisle for other things that we know and have been proven to save lives, that we also consider those options as we move forward.
Response, Mr. Sponsor?
Thank you for your comments. And today we're focused on this bill, but I will say this, I've spent my entire adult career fighting against violence and trying to ensure that those very mental health options are available to everyone that needs them out there. And in this state, we have all voted for multiple different bills to make sure that it is available. Now, there is still more to do, and I hope that there is more that we will do, again, to ensure that every single instance where there is a threat from anyone who is either mentally deranged or bent on evil, that we get in front of that threat before it happens.
Last follow-up, Representative Jones.
Johnson.
I'm
Thank you,
sorry,
Mr. Chair.
Representative Johnson.
That's okay. Well, I just want to say we haven't done everything because expanding Medicaid would give that care to over 300,000 Tennesseans. So perhaps we should be thinking about that as well. Thank you.
Sorry, the chair did, we have people on the list. Would you like to withdraw that? Representative Reedy, Vice Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Question on the bill.
Okay, we've had 2 calls for the question on the bill, but I have another name on the bill, on the list here. Would you please withdraw? Representative Hakeem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leader Lambert. I don't know, I guess I just am in a mood to make maybe a few people mad when I say that Leader Lambert and Representative Jones, both, in my view, are correct in their perspectives. This is a day that we have to look at what is before us and respond to that. And I believe, indeed, the bill does that. It, if not in total, to some great degree. But also the reality is that the concerns expressed by Representative Jones, I don't know if we really take them serious enough to have a frank discussion. It has to be had, that discussion, because the reality is that people are continuing to die, and that indeed, are we looking at it through a political prism as opposed to what is in the best interest of our citizens? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you. Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think all of our hearts are heavy today and a little bit raw. So I apologize if this didn't come out the right way. But Chairman Lambert, I hear what you're saying. I know we're focused on this legislation. I would simply ask, and I'd just like to recognize and acknowledge the fact that it's a shame that we have to have this level of precautionary, almost creating a fortress in our public schools. And what signal does that send to the children? I mean, we have to get together and look at the root causes of how we got to this point where we're trying to fortify our public schools. There's not a day that goes by that I don't walk my children, drop my older children off, or walk my youngest child up to the door of his elementary school and think about where his classroom is located and what the exit points and entrance points are and whether the door's locked, which they all are. You can't even get in the school. We can't even walk our children to our classroom because of the environment that has been created. And there is a climate of fear. And we are all, every one of us sitting up here is partially responsible for that. because we have failed to act. We have failed to do what is necessary, and it has directly resulted in us having to fortify our public schools. And I would just ask, Mr. Leader, Mr. Chairman, everyone, if we can't work together and step back and really look at this issue, look at the root causes of this. Look at how we've gotten here. Why? The real cause. And I just want to say, to my fellow committee members, I don't appreciate you trying to cut off a conversation by calling the question. Just because a conversation is uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's unnecessary.
All right, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would just ask, can we please, I know this is sitting on the bill, work together to look at how we got to this point that makes this bill necessary. And I extend my arm out to anyone and hand out to anyone to work together to try to get to the point where we don't have to fortify our public schools. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Response, Mr. Sponsor.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman, thank you for saying that, but I will say this. Until which time it comes that our streets are totally safe, until we have eradicated evil, until we have gotten to the bottom of every single circumstance where our children may be in danger at their schools, yes, sir, I will do everything within my ability, and I feel like all of us should do everything within our ability to fortify those very schools so that at least our children are safe at school, because today, obviously, they were not. And there is more that we should do. So I accept that hand, sir, and I'm open to any conversation you'd like to have or anybody would like to have on how to continue to make sure that our children are safe. Because again, today they were not, and that is unacceptable.
Thank you. Representative Hemmer, I'm sorry, down here. Representative Hemmer, you're recognized on the bill, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, this bill does not do anything for private schools threat assessment. Is that correct?
You're recognized, Mr. Sponsor.
I'm extremely glad you asked that question. It does not yet. So I'm not able to amend this bill in this particular committee, but as far as I'm concerned, and I'm only speaking for me, I'm not speaking for the governor's office or my caucus at this juncture, but there was a hesitancy to extend this bill's protections to private schools. After today, I hope that is a conversation that we will all have, that whether it's a public school, a private school, wherever that a child is learning, that school should be safe as we can possibly make it. And so as of right now, this affects public schools, but going forward, if this bill passes this committee, and I hope that it will, I would very much like to have that conversation as to how we can ensure that protections in this bill extend to private schools as well.
Before I recognize Representative Hemmer for a follow-up, a reminder, committee members, this bill is before us for rules. Representative Hemmer, you're recognized.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Sponsor. And I think after today, we unfortunately have to have that conversation and look forward to speaking about that later. Thank you.
Chairman Faison, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as the gentleman from Western Davidson County, I just want to remind him and the members here, we passed a bill a few weeks ago. I think the governor's about to sign it, that would allow private schools to partner with local law enforcement to be able to provide resource officers in the private schools.
Vice Chairman Reedy, you recognized. The question has been called. Any objections? Seeing none, we are voting on sending House Bill 322 to calendar and rules. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Bill moves out to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
If you wish to be recorded as a name, make sure you've got with the clerk. Members, next on the agenda is House Bill 947 by Chairman Boyd. We have a motion and a second. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. And Mr. Chairman, there is an amendment traveling with that bill.
Yes, sir. I have 5317. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm showing.
Not required. The amendment is traveling with the bill. So at this point in time, we are only interested in the bill as amended. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. What House Bill 947 does is within the Comptroller's office, there are two very similar boards, the UMRB, the Utility Management Review Board, and the WWFD, the Water and Wastewater Financing Board. It simply merges those two boards together into a new board that will be called TBOR, the Tennessee Board of Utility Regulation. Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Members, this bill is before us for a sunrise hearing on the new entity as well as sunset on the entities being combined, as well as rules. Do you have questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, we have a motion for a positive recommendation before us. All in favor of sending House Bill 947 to Finance, Ways and Means indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Bill moves out with a positive recommendation to Finance, Ways and Means. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you, Chairman, committee.
Members, next up on the agenda is item number 3, House Bill 447 by Chairman Sapicki. We have a motion and a second. Chairman Sapicki, you are recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Very briefly, this is a local bill brought to me by my county commission in my city of Columbia. They're requesting the General Assembly take the western part of the Duck River in Murray County only, make it a Class 2 scenic river, and it also has some rules in there by TDEC. That's why I'm here, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Members, you've heard an explanation of the bill as it is before us, and is also mentioned as before us for rules. Do we have questions of the sponsor? Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Spicky, thank you for this legislation. This is incredibly important, not only to the people of Murray County, but to the entire state of Tennessee and everybody who values their waterways. I will be signing on to this legislation as a co-sponsor to evidence the bipartisan support of this as chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, and I hope that we can move this through the legislature in an expeditious manner for the benefit of the people of Murray County and protect this scenic waterway. Thank you.
Mr. Sponsor, you're recognized for
Thank you,
response.
Mr. Chairman. I'd be remiss if let everybody know this is already a bipartisan. Representative Hemmer, Representative Jones, and Representative Johnson have already signed on to the bill. So we're just asking for your approval, Mr. Chairman.
Well said. Do we have any other questions or comments of the sponsor? Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't get to say this in ag, and I just want to say that this is one of the most important bills that we voted on this session as a member of the Agriculture Committee. And I think I was one of the only members of that committee to go down to Murray County and to stand with the people and to go see for myself the importance of this waterway for 350,000 people, for the cattle industry, for the people who live there and for the generations yet to come. And so, as you stated, Representative Sapicki, it's rare that we agree, but this is such an important bill. And I want to thank you for bringing this despite all the obstacles. And I hope we all can support this. And I just want to commend the people of Murray County who've come to every meeting for months. You see, I'm very passionate about people and their well-being. And I really stand with you all in Murray County because you've really put a lot into this. I got more emails about this bill than any other bill this session. And so I thank you all for being persistent and for keeping, continually showing up to these committees. Thank you.
Any further questions of the sponsor? The question's been called on the bill. Without objection, we are voting on sending House Bill 447 to Calendar and Rules with a positive recommendation. All in favor indicating by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Bill moves out to
Thank you,
Calendar and
Committee Chair.
Rules with a positive recommendation. Item number 4, item 1336 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 5, House Bill 521 by Representative Dixie. You're recognized, sir. We have a motion and a second. And I would remind people this is one of the issues where we have an amendment to put on it. It's traveling with Amendment 4980. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
And I'm
yes,
showing you proposing Amendment 6707. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. We have a motion and a second on your amendment, sir. Does it rewrite the bill?
No, it just it's a clarification. I had an issue with the Commission on Aging and Disability, just to clarify that they can continue doing what they do for their community, and it won't jeopardize the funding that they receive for that particular program.
So that was an explanation of the amendment.
Yes, sir.
Members, you have heard it. We have a motion and a second on the amendment. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, we're voting on putting the amendment 6707 on House Bill 521. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The amendment is on the bill. And you said it didn't rewrite it, but our indications are that it does. Would you like to amend your statement, sir?
Oh, I may think it. Okay, I will amend my statement, but I thought it was just pretty much just for clarification as far as.
It does clarify your bill, but it's part of a rewrite.
Okay, sorry.
All right. So we've heard now. Would you like to restate any portion of your explanation?
Okay, so the actual amendment, it does clarify that the council on community, the Commission on Aging and Disability can continue to perform the functions that they do in the programs that they have, which allows them to continue to receive funding. But this is an important bill because what it does, it adds regulation to the board certified music therapists, and it creates a commission for that so they can be regulated. I can answer any question that you have, and I also have members that are from that community that are music therapists that can answer any questions that I may not can answer thoroughly or that you may want to go more in depth about. But board certified therapists, right now we have about 160 serving in Tennessee. And these is 3 universities that have these: University of Tennessee, Austin Peay, and the University of Ford. So it would be University of Chattanooga and Belmont. But these are important. in
So
bills.
as I understand it, you're in favor of having some people speak on your bill, sir? Is that correct?
If you, I can look and see if I can answer the questions, and then if someone wants to, and then if we need
I
to go
think
out
we
of
have
session.
some people that want to speak. So
Okay. Yeah.
members, we will go out of session. On the list, I have Ms. Friddle, Ms. Ferrer, however you say that, and Ms. Glass. If you would come forward, please. Take a seat. Your microphone has a button on it. Make sure you get the red light in the button and pull the microphone closer to you if you need to. Give us your name and if you represent an organization, and then your comments. Ms. Friddle?
Friedel.
Friedel?
Yes.
You are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Reagan. I appreciate it. And all the members of the House Government Operations Committee, thank you for this opportunity to address the topic of HB 0521 in recognition of music therapy in Tennessee. Again, my name is Carrie Friedel, and I am a board-certified music therapist and neurologic music therapist and the owner of In Harmony Music Therapy of Middle Tennessee. I have a private practice working. I've been working for 17 years throughout Middle Tennessee, working with children and adults with various diagnoses, including autism, Down syndrome, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease, working on their individual goals with music to increase their well-being and quality of life. We're seeking licensure to protect consumers by requiring people who present themselves as music therapists to meet state and national standards. Music therapists work with vulnerable populations, so it is imperative to regulate this profession in the state to safeguard members of the public who may be less able to protect themselves. Without state licensing of the music therapy profession, the public has no system in place for filing complaints in regarding unethical practice. There is no mechanism for consumers to determine competent providers and no legal consequences that prevent untrained individuals from falsely claiming to provide music therapy to vulnerable populations. Licensing regulation is necessary to prevent incidents of unqualified individuals having access to clients' confidential information and potentially compromising clients' health and wellness issues. Licensure for nationally board certified music therapists will also create a new revenue stream for the state of Tennessee. We now have 160 nationally board certified music therapists and counting, living and working in the state of Tennessee in a variety of settings. Music therapists often work with an interdisciplinary team of professionals to meet the needs of patients, clients, and students here in Tennessee in private practice, several school systems, many hospitals, hospice, mental health facilities, and assisted living memory care homes. The dedicated music therapist in Tennessee provides quality services to residents of our state. We believe that HB 0521 will ensure that consumers are protected and better able to access effective music therapy intervention from qualified providers. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Next on my list, Mrs. Ferrer.
Yes.
Can you say that for me, please?
Yes, thank you, Ferrer.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Ferrer.
you.
Please give us your name, any organization you're associated with. Make sure your light's on. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Reagan and members of the House Government Operations Committee. My name is Alejandra Ferrer, and I am a board-certified music therapist and associate professor and coordinator of music therapy at Belmont University. I am also a member of the American Music Therapy Association's Board of Directors, where I serve as coordinator for the Council on Education and Clinical Training. Over the past 20 years, I have worked as a music therapist with a variety of clinical populations, including premature infants in the neonatal intensive care unit, oncology patients, adults with severe mental illness and acute and extended care forensic units, and older adults with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in recognition of House Bill 0521. Music therapy is an allied health profession recognized by the National Institutes of Health and considered a related service by the U.S. Department of Education. Music therapy is a unique, standalone profession with its own education, clinical training, and credentialing requirements. In Tennessee, music therapists are employed in clinical facilities all over the state, including Vanderbilt and TriStar Centennial Medical Centers, the VA Medical Center in Murfreesboro, Le Bonheur Children's Hospital, and St. Jude Children's Hospital. A bachelor's in music therapy is a 4.5-year degree that imparts entry-level competencies in the areas of music, clinical foundations, music therapy, and general education. In tandem with the required academic coursework, music therapy students complete 1,200 hours of hands-on clinical training under the supervision of a board-certified music therapist. These hours are acquired through a series of practicum rotations and a 6-month full-time clinical internship. Following the completion of the degree requirements, music therapy graduates sit for a national board examination offered by the Certification Board for Music Therapists, the only certifying body for music therapy practice in the United States. To maintain this credential, 100 hours of continuing education must be completed for every 5-year cycle. Music therapy practitioners are allied healthcare professionals trained to independently analyze and evaluate a client's verbal, nonverbal, psychological, and physiological responses to music, adapting the music therapy interventions accordingly to protect the client from negative outcomes. The education and clinical training of music therapists ensures that practitioners deliver safe, effective, evidence-based clinical services to vulnerable populations. A music therapist is not an artist or a volunteer, but rather a clinician who has been trained to design and apply music-based therapeutic interventions to support individuals in achieving non-musical goals. House Bill 0521 will encourage graduates of the state's music therapy programs to remain in Tennessee, filling existing employment positions and establishing new high-quality clinical programs. House Bill 0521 will increase access to music therapy services for our residents and help clarify who is qualified to
I'm
practice
sorry,
music
ma'am, your
therapy in the
time has
state.
expired.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Ms. Glass.
Yes.
Would you please give us your name and any organization you're affiliated with? Make sure you've got the red light on your microphone.
Yes. My name is Yvonne Glass, and I'm a board-certified music therapist and the internship director at Centennial Medical Center. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 0521. I've been practicing music therapy in the state of Tennessee for 35 years, doing clinical work, teaching adjunct at university, and as a curriculum consultant for university programs. I have advanced training in neurologic music therapy, neonatal and medical music therapy, and in the Bonney method of guided imagery and music. I work primarily in behavioral health, but also serve patients in the med-surg, neuro, and cardiac intensive care units. I'd like to share an example of what a music therapist does to highlight why establishing a music therapy license is so important for ensuring that music therapy services are safe because they're provided by qualified clinicians. First, I'll tell you about working with a patient in the cardiac intensive care unit for many months. After receiving a doctor's order to treat him, he was critically ill due to COVID and on an ECMO machine, which oxygenated his blood as his own heart and lungs could not. Prior to his illness, he was a vibrant man, leading a full life, but now, hooked to wires and machines keeping him alive, he was extremely scared and depressed, despite the balloons, cards, and family photos lining the walls of his room. When I first met him, he was not responsive. He was on a ventilator, he could not speak to me, but he also made no eye contact or movement in my direction. Nonetheless, I spoke to him and his wife and started treatment focusing on regulating his physiological responses through specific temporal or speed, dynamic or volume, and melodic cueing with my voice and my guitar. During the session, I continually monitored his machines, and over the course of the session, I was able to decrease his blood pressure, significantly lower his pulse rate, and increase his oxygen saturation. I treated him for several months, and when he was off of a ventilator, I used music to engage him, provide a sense of normalization amidst all of the beeping machines, and strengthen his voice and breathing. On the day of his transfer to a rehabilitation center, I entered his room and his wife started crying when she saw me. She proceeded to say, "He's being discharged later today. And I remember the very first time you saw us. I just kept looking at his monitors and watching his pulse come down. Everything get better, and he has come so far. Thank you." This just provides one example of the critical role music therapists play in our work and in our community. I also serve stroke patients and help them to regain cognition, localize sound, and begin their journey towards long-term rehabilitation. I work daily with patients who are depressed and suicidal and need to learn how to cope with their lives. Trained music therapists can do all that. Licensure is so important for ensuring Tennesseans have access to safe and competent music therapy services. I'm proud of how far music therapy has come during my career, and even prouder that my daughter is studying music therapy at a local university. I hope this has helped you to understand how important licensure is. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have questions of our guests? Chairman Reedy, you recognize a question for our guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know you provide a valuable service. Here's where I'm struggling with this piece of legislation. Looking at the fiscal impact of it and knowing that it's going to be maybe a burden. I'm seeing it says approximately 160 music therapists in the state. The professional music therapist license fee will be $500. The biannual renewal fee will be $300. Are you all comfortable with that financial? And we're talking, you've got experience 20 to 30 years already taking care of our citizens of the state with the talents that you do have. Do we really need this piece of legislation to put the burden on your fellow workers in this field, or are you not comfortable with the work that you're able to accomplish without the burden of this fiscal note?
Whichever one of you would like to tackle that, please.
Thank you so much for that question. And it is something that we all have considered. And in terms of the high cost, we are aware and wish it could be different. We are also aware that, for example, in Nashville, there are many well-intended musicians and volunteers who refer to themselves as music therapists, are being hired as music therapists, yet don't have the clinical training musically, clinically, to safely address the patients with whom they're working. And harm has been caused. Music is a very, very powerful therapeutic agent, and just like it can produce significantly positive effects, it can also be quite harmful and dysregulating. And for the safety of the consumer, we are willing to take that burden because what we do matters. We recognize the power of music therapy, and we know that for it to be effective, it has to be used responsibly. And for that reason, somebody has to have an appropriate level of training.
Additional
you.
questions? Chairman Reedy, follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To relay a story, I had befriended, he was a country music star out of Canada, but moved to the United States, moved to Tennessee. Now, he has since been gone, suffered through dementia. But let me tell you what he was doing and tell me if it would be this type of person would still be allowed or okay to do this, because he loved the music and he loved to share the music. So the nursing homes, the assisted living, senior citizen centers, he would go in and play his music, and you could see it lift the spirits of many in the room. If this legislation passes and it's that type of individual that's wanting to share it, of course, he wasn't calling himself a music therapist or anything else. He's just sharing his love, his talent. How would that affect somebody doing this same type of work?
Okay, which is that question for the sponsor or the witnesses?
I want to take it to the witnesses because they're the ones that steeped into the work that they do for
Yeah.
the state.
All right, you may want to address that to the sponsor later too. Please, one of you put,
We are in no way wanting to regulate necessarily what other people's do, but rather protect what we do. So the musicians and volunteers and artists will continue to be able to go into any place they want and provide music. We recognize the value of music and we don't want that to stop. What we want is the regulation of the professional title and the scope of practice of a music therapist. So that will not change, that will not affect any of those people, but it will give us the title protection that we have earned and deserved as clinicians and professionals.
Representative Bolso, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let's just stick with Ms. Ferrer because you're doing such a wonderful job already. I've got a couple of questions dealing with existing law and then with the practice of music therapy. First, how many other states currently license music therapists?
There's approximately a dozen states that are already carry the license.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have an idea, Ms. Ferrer, as to why the other 38 states in the union so far have decided not to regulate the practice of music therapy in the manner that's being requested here today?
Yeah.
You're recognized.
It is not necessarily that they've chosen not to, it's that their task forces are in the process of doing exactly what we're doing here. So the task forces in the different states have just started this work, actively pursuing license as recent as maybe 8-10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So it is not something that we have been pursuing for too long. And so many bills have not even been introduced in other states.
Follow up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned in response to Vice Chairman Reedy's question that harm has been caused without violating any confidences. Can you relate to the committee specifically what circumstances you're referring to?
Yeah, I serve premature infants in the neonatal intensive care unit. And one of the populations that I frequently see are babies who have been diagnosed with neonatal abstinence syndrome. This is a result of mothers being on opioid medications during the pregnancy. These babies are born with what is typically referred to as neurological dysregulation. They are very agitated. They are hyperreactive to their environment. Their physiological parameters are unstable. They really have to often be maintained in a very quiet, calm, dark area with minimal to no stimuli in order to keep them as calm and comfortable as possible. A very well-intended musician may think lullabies soothe babies, lullabies calm children, help to promote sleep, decrease agitation, decrease heart rate. And that is true when the lullaby is delivered according to best practices that are based on research evidence, which have determined what type of music is safe, what musical elements should be implemented in order to make this song safe. If I provide the wrong type of music to an already dysregulated baby, I can send this baby into crisis. And that is a harmful consequence, right? Elevating their heart rate, elevating their blood pressure, decreasing oxygen saturations, throwing them into a state of disorganization. That's just one example.
Further follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate your response, Ms. Ferrer, but I had understood your prior testimony to be that harm had actually been caused, as a matter of historical fact, some patient had been harmed by someone engaging in music therapy without appropriate credentials or skill. Are you aware of any such occasions?
Oh, yes.
You're recognized.
Yes.
Please tell us.
In these NICUs, for example, many times they hire volunteer musicians to play next to the isolette. And a lot of the times the musicians, because of the lack of training, use classical music to soothe the babies. And classical music, while for many of us it's relaxing and soothing, it's actually quite alerting and does result in these hyperreactions in the infant or in a patient in intensive care unit or in a patient who's already in pain. So the well-intended person who brings music to the bedside, which does happen, has happened because there are many volunteers who are performing in medical centers with very fragile, vulnerable populations without the training. We have seen this. Yeah.
Last follow-up, please.
One final follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Now, I understand that because you and the other panelists are already well qualified, that passing this regulatory scheme will not obviously affect your ability to practice or the skill with which you practice. But could you just summarize for the committee those individuals whom you would hope that the regulatory scheme would no longer allow to do type of music therapy that those individuals are doing currently?
I would want to make sure that people who are providing music for pleasure and for comfort at the bedside or in any type of clinical facility are not referring to themselves as music therapist, that they understand where their scope of practice begins and where it ends. Music therapists operate through a therapeutic treatment process. We assess our patients, we develop a treatment plan, we implement, we document, we analyze, we change as needed. Our plans are highly individualized. We are a clinician who uses music. We would want there to be a difference between the volunteer musician who's bringing music to others for pleasure versus a music therapist who's working on clinical goals.
Thank you very much. Do we have other questions of our guests? Seeing none, ladies, thank you for your testimony. You're excused. While we're out of session, I'm going to ask legal to clarify a point on the bill. Legal, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Garrett with the Office of Legal Services. Just a quick clarification about the bill, and I'm speaking to draft number 6707 in relation to the bill as introduced. That amendment still includes a fee provision. It also still involves a board, and then it places that board in sunset. So the sponsor may want to speak to the intent of the change, but it does change the language from a license to certification.
Thank you. Questions of legal? Seeing none, we are back in session. I have Chairman Reedy on my list for a question of the sponsor. You're recognized, Chairman Reedy.
So, Mr. Sponsor, you were wanting to make response back where I had asked the question. Do you still want to answer that at this time?
You're recognized, sir.
I think those ladies did an excellent job. I mean, if you're
They
satisfied with
did.
how they answered, then I'm fine with it.
I was just going to yield to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank
All
you.
right, thank you. All right, members of the committee, do we have further questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, the question's been called on the bill. Any objections? We are voting to send House Bill 521 with a positive recommendation to Finance, Ways and Means. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay? Whoa, okay. Madam Clerk, roll call, please, for the vote.
Representatives Bolso.
No.
Representative Bolso votes no. Representative Carr. Representative Carr votes no. Representative Chisholm. Representative Chisholm votes yes. Representative Clemens.
Yes.
Representative Clemens votes yes. Representative Crawford.
No.
Representative Crawford votes no. Representative Eldridge. Representative Eldridge votes no. Representative Faison.
Go on.
Representative Hakeem.
Here, I apologize. In favor of, yes.
Representative Hakeem votes aye. Representative Himmer. Representative Himmer votes aye. Representative Jones.
Aye.
Representative Jones votes aye. Representative Kiesling.
No.
Representative Kiesling votes no. Representative Kumar.
Aye.
Representative Kumar votes aye. Representative Lafferty. Okay. Representative Littleton. Representative Littleton votes no. Representative Martin.
No.
Representative Martin votes no. Representative McCalman.
Nope.
Representative McCalman votes no. And excuse me, I skipped over the designees, so is that okay?
You skipped over who?
The designees.
Go ahead and add them to the end.
Okay. Excuse me, sorry about that. Representative Johnson. Aye. Representative Johnson votes aye. And Representative Haynes. Representative Haynes votes aye. Vice Chairman Reedy?
No.
Vice Chairman Reedy votes no. I'm sorry, excuse me. Representative Rutter? Representative Rutter votes no. And Chairman Reagan?
Present.
Chairman Reagan, present, not voting. Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes, 9 noes, and 1 present not voting.
Thank you. Members, the recommendation for a positive recommendation fails, does not kill the bill. The bill is going to Finance, Ways and Means with a negative recommendation. Thank you. Members, next on the agenda is item number 6, House Bill 1103 by Chair Lady Littleton. You're recognized. We have a motion, second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do have an amendment I'd like to add, please.
All right, I show it traveling with Amendment 4859. Is that correct?
Yes, but I'd like to add another one, 6061, please.
I'm showing that also.
Motion on the amendment.
We have a motion on the amendment and a second. Chair Lady, does this rewrite
It
your bill?
does. Yes, it does.
All right, members, to get this bill in the proper posture, we are voting to add Amendment 6061 to the House Bill 1103. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
No.
The bill is amended. If you wish to be recorded as a no, see the clerk. Chair Lady Littleton, you are recognized to address your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Second Look Commission, which is the dependent and neglect cases, has done a lot of work reviewing important cases of child abuse so that we can really see what is and isn't working and what we need to do in order to improve. And this creates the juvenile justice version, which will serve to help us do the same in regards to juvenile delinquents. The goal is to use this to prevent the issues we are seeing and what are all we discussed through the Juvenile Justice Ad Hoc Committee.
Members, you've heard an explanation of the bill as amended. Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my concern is with the new amendment that's gone on the legislation that makes the bill, specifically with respect to Section 373905 that states this commission is administratively attached to the department. Chair Lady, why have we taken this away from the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth and put it within the department that it's supposed to be reviewing?
Madam Sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this will be a new committee, and it has a pretty good fiscal note on it, and we're hoping that moving this will help the fiscal note come down a little bit, or a whole lot, actually.
Follow on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chair Lady, for that explanation. Though we already have a Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth, I'm not sure side of this would be concerning. So the commission is to review the juvenile justice cases and any critical incidents involving delinquent juveniles in the custody of the department. It would seem to be a conflict of interest to house this particular new commission within the very department that it is reviewing and providing vital findings on and recommendations. There would seem to be an inherent conflict of interest there. And additionally, we've taken the Tennessee Commission of Children and Youth off of the commission itself that we're creating here. Can you speak to those concerns, Chair Lady?
Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything would remain the same. The people that are appointed to this commission would be the same as the Second Look Commission, except it would be under the DCS. And there are DCS workers on there as well. We think it's very important that we do study what happens to our juvenile delinquents, how they got to where they are.
Further questions? Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said that it would be preventative. I'm curious how that would happen because this happens after the offenses are committed or after, this has become a juvenile justice issue. So how is this preventative?
I said this.
You're recognized.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I said this is to prevent the issues we're seeing and what we've discussed through the JJ ad hoc committee, where we studied those, and we're hoping that this will help. We'll study it so that we can prevent these from happening again in the future.
Follow up, Representative Johnson.
I'm having a problem with seeing that connection, especially with the Second Look Commission, where our backlog was so many children, and you cited that as an example, and we only see a handful of cases a year while these continue. Is this group going to be looking more than just like 12 cases a year? Or are they going to be able to really study what's happening and causation?
You're recognized, Chair Lee Little.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It'll be the same. We'll see about 12 to 15 cases a year, but these are the worst of the worst cases. And so it takes a while to study them, and we do go through them explicitly. We study them for like a couple of hours. After we read the reports, then we study them for a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours while we're there in the commission meeting.
Representative Henry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was listening to the sponsor's explanation and said that the amendment was hopeful to decrease state expenditures. And I just noticed the fiscal note actually increased state expenditures. So I was just curious how that was coming to pass.
Chair Lee Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a little meeting today, and we're hoping that we can bring that down some before it goes to the floor.
Thank you. Follow up. Seeing none. Further questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, we are voting on sending House Bill 1103 to Finance, Ways and Means as amended with a positive recommendation. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
No.
The ayes have it. It moves out
Thank you, Mr.
to
Chairman.
Finance, Ways and Means with a positive recommendation. As a reminder, members, item number 8 was rolled. We are on item number 7, and I pass the gavel to Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Reagan and members. Item number 7, House Bill 1388, and it's traveling with an amendment. Do we have a motion? We've got a motion and a second. Chairman Reagan,
Thank you,
you're on the
Vice Chair.
bill.
Thank you. House Bill 1376 strengthens the prohibition on the divisive concepts that was in TCA 49-7-19. And I'm sorry, I've got the wrong bill. Forgive me. 1388.
House Bill 1388.
Forgive me. This bill. This bill removes the requirement for the licensure for the persons who practice radiologic imaging and radiation therapy. And it has an amendment on it that is, in fact, traveling with it, and it dissolves the board. The board has been in existence for 6 years and has not promulgated rules or otherwise proven that it does anything other than exist and soak up money. It is in the red. The functions of the board were being performed by the Board of Medical Examiners prior to its creation and during its attempt to come to existence and accomplish its mission. So that function has continued under them, and with the dissolution of the board, will stay with them. With that explanation, belatedly with the wrong bill to begin with, I am standing ready for questions.
Thank you, Chairman Reagan, and I understand that the amendment rewrites the bill. If
Yep.
there's no objection, we'll go out of session to hear from Jennifer Thompson and Rob Snyder, if you'll please come forward. Check the light for your microphones. Make sure that it's on and introduce yourselves for the record, please.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Jennifer Thompson, President of the Tennessee Society of Radiologic Technologists and appointed board member by Governor Bill Lee. I want to start off by thanking my students who are right now at Vanderbilt taking care of the children in today's shooting, and all of the other technologists who have been trained in those life-saving activities and diagnostic processes that will extend the life of these individuals. The Board of Radiologic Imaging and Radiation Therapy should not be on trial today. You have heard that it has taken 6 years to promulgate rules. This is not true. From 2017 to 2018, that's when the board was selected. From 2018 to 2019, rules for 10 professions were promulgated. That is a great feat, 10 professions. From 2019 to 2021, we were in an internal review. If you note those dates, 2019 to 2021, we know that we were in the midst of a pandemic. Technologists that we want to license were on the front lines, being the primary diagnostic individuals, because that was the gold standard whenever COVID first came. The board took 1 year for promulgating these rules. Additionally, legislation knew that we had completed the rules and that the internal review was lasting longer than expected. They approved the board until 2025. Bill Lee signed off on our promulgated rules, and in 2022, we began accepting applications. In May of 2022, the THA asked us to withdraw the rules. We wanted to work with external stakeholders, so therefore we did. In November 2022, THA and a rural community member created a task force. We created rules with THA, which they agreed upon. The board completed the rules in 1 year. A delay of implementation was from the THA. We worked with external stakeholders. The board was extended to 2025. Let us complete our work by having licensed technologists in hospitals provide safe diagnostic care. The House has also heard that there's no harm been reported. Since 2019, we might say this is true because because legislators repealed the reporting process of radiology. But from 2010 to 2019, over $20 million was paid out to patients from radiology and imaging errors. That's us, technologists that do not have a license in Tennessee. What might be more alarming, since licensure was not implemented in hospitals, we will never know who these people were that created these diagnostic imaging errors. They are working on you. They are working on your parents, your children. They are working in different states because there's no licensure today.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Your time has expired. Mr. Snyder.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Snyder. I am just representing my profession. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come speak with you today. I have been I'm going on my 30th year in radiology. I have been administrative director, director of radiology, network director of radiology for about 23 years of those 30 years. I've been very involved in overseeing direct patient care as well as performing direct patient care. I've been licensed or hold a license in the state of Indiana, Texas, Louisiana, and I've been here 4 years and obviously don't require a license. As a matter of fact, in the state of Texas, it took me 9 months to just get a state license because the board that oversees our licensure in the state of Texas is actually the same board that oversees the MD and DO licensure. Every other state that I've worked in, dispensing radiation without a license is a Class C misdemeanor. It's a $1,000 fine for the institution and a $1,000 fine for the person that makes the exposure. It's viewed as a medication because radiation is it can be harmful. Just like it can be beneficial, it can be harmful as well. So it's viewed as without dispensing radiation or medication without a license, that's when you get a fine. And like I said, it's each instance. So if I was unlicensed and I took 2 exposures, that's a $2,000 fine for me, $2,000 fine for whatever hospital or place that I'm working at. While none of us have a crystal ball, I can tell you the trends for the regulations from Medicare and others. Mammo already is required to have a license to perform mammography. CT is as well. More and more states, or more and more modalities are requiring it as well. By the state taking the step backwards, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually we're going to be behind because there will be regulations for to be reimbursed, these hospitals to be reimbursed, and we're going to be behind the power curve. These hospitals will not be able to get reimbursed for procedures they've performed.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Members, we do have
you.
Mr. Zach Blair. I want to call him forward at this time. The two folks that you heard testimony from are in opposition of this piece of legislation, but in favor, Mr. Zach Blair. Just check your microphone and introduce yourselves for the record, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee. My name is Zach Blair. I'm with Tennessee Hospital Association. I'll be very brief and just wanted to hopefully provide a few clarifying points. The first, obviously, is the creation of the board in 2016. I was able to watch legislative testimony regarding that, and at the time, the question came up from several members: what is the public safety or danger to welfare in the state? And the answer at that time from the folks that were presenting this was that they were aware of none. And when I checked with the Department of Health recently, that continues to be the case. There's not been any reported issues with safety with how these procedures are going. And we really feel strongly that if we are able to continue down this path of burdensome regulations, that over 1,000 radiology professionals and hospitals throughout the state will no longer be able to practice how they're practicing now, or will no longer be employed by their hospitals or other facilities where they may be. Again, the public safety justification and the lack of promulgated regulations over the last 7 years has been frustrating to a certain extent, but now that we've gone down that path, there have been several problematic things that have arisen in those. Unfortunately, we have not come to an agreement on those rules and regulations. We offered a significant amount of feedback. Some was taken seriously, some was not, unfortunately, and that is why we're in the position that we're here today. Yes, public safety is critically important. We want to protect our patients in hospitals and other settings, but it doesn't seem like this is the direction to go if we want to keep people who are performing their jobs, continuing to perform their jobs. Last point, we had testimony from the CEO of Macon County Hospital just a couple weeks ago. He indicated, and several hospitals are in the same footing, 24/7 radiology services in Tennessee rural hospitals will cease to exist if the rules that we have are moving forward, and that's been very clear. And in addition to emergency services, mammography, other things that are very important to hospitals to perform would not be able to occur at those facilities if those rules move forward. And finally, this moves it back to the Board of Medical Examiners. There's nothing to preclude the board from promulgating additional rules or even creating licensure at a future time. But at this point, we are respectfully requesting that we not go this direction and move into the direction that we've been since 2016, where this has been regulated by the Board of Medical Examiners. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Questions? Representative Hakeem, I've got you first on the list, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Sir, I believe I just heard you say something about burdensome regulations, and I guess I'm interested to know how that plays out when we talk about the health and safety of our citizens.
Representative Hakeem, thank you for the question. So specifically for hospital radiologists, they are under very strict requirements from CMS, from Joint Commission, if that is the accrediting body, to provide these services. This would be an additional layer on top of those requirements that we do find to be burdensome because it is not competitive with any of the states that are around us. Only 4 states of the 8 bordering states in Tennessee, that border Tennessee, require licensure, and most do not require specific licensure and continuing education requirements for every single modality. And that is the issue that we are facing, is that if you're not allowing cross-training to occur and you're not allowing certification to occur in those hospitals as people learn those skills, then they will not be able to perform the jobs and the tasks that they have always performed.
Representative Hakeem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what I'm hearing from you is that persons are qualified to do the job that they're doing without this, what was it, accreditation? Or what
Yeah.
was the word?
So professionals are required in whatever setting to receive certification from a national organization. If you work outside of a hospital setting, then you are then required to get certification by the state. The idea in 2016 was that we move from certification to full licensure, and we're still not there. We are still under certification from the Board of Medical Examiners because this particular board has not been able to accomplish the tasks that they were set out to, that they were required legislatively to accomplish.
Follow up, Representative King.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Jones, I have you as next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to get some points of clarity, but I had questions for both sides of the witnesses.
Please continue.
What's your name again?
Zach Blair.
Ms. Blair, Mr. Blair, are you a radiologist?
No, sir, I'm not.
You're a, oh, sorry. I don't know if we need to be recognized. Thank you. Are you a lobbyist for the THA?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. So then I think my questions are better for the trained professionals of the radiologists.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you. What, in what ways do you feel like this could impact equity in rural communities? Like, do you think this will negatively impact rural areas? And can you explain that to us?
Dr. Jennifer Thompson. So yes, so if you got care in Nashville, more than likely, or 99% of the chance, you are going to have a full scope ART certified registered radiologic technologist do all of your medical imaging. If you go to the hospital that Mr. Blair mentioned, you will not have your images done by a certified registered technologist. In his testimony, he said mammography is done by a limited scope. That is against federal law. The testimony also said that they wouldn't have CT or MRI. Those individuals at that location do not have the education to run those machines. It takes more than 2 years to become a full scope radiologic technologist, plus education to do CT, MRI, nuclear medicine, radiation therapy, ultrasound, densitometry, mammography. Limited scope are not allowed to cross-train in CT and MRI. It is beyond their scope of practice. CT delivers enough radiation to one scan is 10 years of radiation, depending on your machine. But very high doses. And for children, 1 in 300 after one scan may develop cancer in their lifetime. We do not need someone who's had 10 days of education working with these machines. We know that with the CEO's hospital, they educate students, so they're able to have full scope technologists. 30 minutes down the road, their entire hospital has full scope technologists. He's speaking of 1,000 technologists. That's not true. That's not how many that are working in hospitals. We have 8,000 technologists in hospitals without oversight, with 15,000 certifications on machinery that needs to have oversight by the state. If a person has been misdiagnosed, then that person, because there is no there's no record of who that person was that misdiagnosed the patient by their imaging, I would suggest that they sue the state because you guys are eliminating the possibility of being able to hold those technologists accountable.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Follow up, Representative Jones?
Can you talk a little bit more about patient safety, like the adverse effects of patient safety? I think that's what we should be concerned about, not the profit of a hospital.
Right. So what we learned with, and we're going way back, what we learned with Hiroshima is that latent effects of radiation are real. We do not know immediately that the radiation has injured a patient. This is all on a cellular level. One X-ray photon can mutate a cell to where it's going to proliferate to cancer. In radiation therapy, the amount of dose that is given to a patient does harm the patient. It gives them radiation burns. Those that are in radiography can be doing IR procedures and OR, and there can be enough radiation to where it burns the patient just due to how much radiation that patient gets. Also, we know that after a person is radiated, it could be their grandchildren that are actually have those mutations because it goes into the gonadal area and affects the ova. So we can't visually see an X-ray. We can't visually see what's going on with the body, but X-ray interacts with atoms. There can be detrimental effects from radiation.
Thank you. Representative Jones?
Thank you so much.
Representative Johnson?
Thank you. I want to speak to the point because I've had an experience where had scans done at one hospital, went to a new doctor at another hospital, and he said, I can't use these scans. You know, they weren't done correctly. They were not appropriate. And so you end up having to redo. And that's, happened on more than one occasion. So I appreciate the licensing and the school. And I really think we need to pay close attention to that because rescanning folks is expensive.
And if I could make a quick comment, the question with the musical therapy, they said 45 states require state licensing, 45 states. And I'm sure that 45 states have rural hospitals. They're able to provide care. I think Tennessee should be able to as well.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Follow up? Representative Kiesling?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Mr. Snyder, of course, they're able to provide services. Who are you with? I'm going to assume you're with Vanderbilt. Is that correct?
Well, that is where I work.
There you
I'm
go.
there.
That's what I thought.
I'm here on my own. Not,
Sure. And you are also from Vanderbilt. Is that correct, Dr. Thompson?
I am not. I'm a
You're not?
professor
Pardon?
I'm a professor of radiologic technology and a radiologic technologist.
Where?
Austin Peay State University.
Okay, thank you. I want to say, as a rural representative, I do appreciate you, Chairman Reagan, for bringing this, as well as the Senate sponsor. You folks understand our situation. Mr. Blair has explained already to you his conversation with a CEO of a rural hospital. It just happens to be Macon County in the Great 38th. We're struggling up there with personnel, struggling. Mr. Blair and THA, they understand that. I hope you all will as well. Thank you, Mr. Blair, for being here and giving us what information you did, because I know you all you and the folks at THA understand you have a finger on everything that's going on right now throughout our rural hospitals from Memphis to Mountain City, and I appreciate you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Thank you, Chairman. Any further questions for the panel from the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony. Thank you for being with us today. We're back in session.
Thank you, Chairman.
On the bill, Representative Martin, a question for Chairman Reagan.
Chairman Reagan, ever so briefly, could you tell me the difference between the amendment and the original bill?
Chairman Reagan.
Hang on just a second here. Well, obviously it rewrote the bill. But essentially what it does is make sure that the regulatory authority stays under the Board of Medical Examiners instead of the Division of Health-Related Boards. It amends the language throughout several clarifications regarding definitions to the extent of the authority of the board and the requirements for licensure. It prohibits business from performing X-ray procedures unless the business is owned by a physician, a medical professional, a corporation, a limited liability medical professional company, or is licensed by the Health Facilities Commission. It also makes some minor changes to the definitions of physician's office.
Representative Martin. Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for the sponsor. Does this, if we pass this bill, does this take it back to exactly what it was when we changed it?
Chairman Reagan.
Actually, it doesn't take it back because it never left what it was. The Board of Medical Examiners was promulgating guidance issuing licenses before 2016 when this bill went through. It has continued to do so throughout this time frame, and this bill that I have basically leaves it in the Board of Medical Examiners, which, contrary to popular opinion, the Board of Medical Examiners does have radiologists, and it does make current rules, and it does set standards. The issue before us, quite frankly, as was implied there, is that the Board of Medical Examiners, of whom we have an esteemed physician sitting on our committee who knows certainly what they do, is incapable of deciding these things. And I submit to you that is not the case. Furthermore, there was a statement made that a gargantuan lift was made for 10 professions and getting a rule promulgated. Members of this committee are probably aware, but if you're not, I'll make you aware. Emergency rules can be promulgated in less than 3 months. In fact, less than a month for some of them. Regular rules usually take no longer than 6 months. And yet they're proud that they took a year. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. And furthermore, signed by Governor Lee, none of those rules that they were talking about came before this committee. We saw none of them. So by the definition of rules that are properly promulgated and put forward, there have not been any. The issues that were brought before you as though they were accomplished facts were not so. As a number of you know that have been on this committee for some time, that group has not been before us with any rules.
Chairman Crawford, follow up. Any further questions for the chairman on the bill? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? The question's been called. The motion has been made and second on House Bill 1388 as amended to move forward with a positive recommendation to the
Calendar.
Okay, to calendar and rules, getting our record straight. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions? No.
No.
Bill moves out with a positive recommendation. Committee, item number 9, House Bill 1376 by Chairman Reagan. Chairman Reagan, you are recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize. This was the bill I tried to present earlier. House Bill 1376.
Do we have a motion? We've got a motion and a second. Chairman Reagan?
Thank you, and I believe you show this traveling with an amendment, sir.
It is. That amendment for the record's 5889. It is traveling. And it rewrites the bill, so you're recognized on the bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 1376 is called the Tennessee Higher Education Freedom of Expression and Transparency Act. Its purpose is to strengthen the prohibitions of the divisive concepts that were promulgated in Tennessee Code Annotated 49-7-19 by promoting freedom of expression and educational excellence. Free expression and overtly questioning and challenging and defending opinions is vital to a properly educated individual. No one should be forced to abandon their morals or peaceful and lawful beliefs to avoid discrimination in public higher education. Students and taxpayers trust their higher education institutions to educate without intentional bias or social and political agendas. Indoctrination and divisive concepts compromises the principles of academic freedom, merit, and excellence. The impact of this bill will be to keep colleges about advancing knowledge and not advancing their own political or social agendas. This bill establishes a transparent system for identifying and tracking alleged violations and complaints concerning TCA 49-7-1903, which is the divisive concepts, Any student or staff member may file a complaint, and it requires the institutions to maintain a public record of violations on their website, redacted only to avoid FERPA indications, and also to ensure that these investigations are made public. It prohibits institutional bias or favoritism among student groups. Routine and peaceful, lawful facility use must be open to all recognized student groups. Student-invited guest speakers may not be denied solely on the basis of race, religion, or nonviolent political ideology. Opposition campus groups may not veto other institutionally recognized peaceful campus groups or their invited speakers. Institutional fees must be the same for all students properly using campus spaces. The exception is institutions may deny obscene displays or events. This is already institutionalized in our TCA Code 39. This prohibits state-appropriated funds to be used for memberships, meetings, and activities of organizations endorsing divisive concepts. In short, it requires equity, diversity, and inclusion for employees, and it supports learning activities for all the students of all races and ethnicities. With that explanation, I stand ready to answer questions.
Thank you, Chairman Reagan. Representative Jones, I've got you first on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is the first time that we're able to ask questions because the question was called immediately in Education Committee, so we weren't able to ask questions at all. So I appreciate the time and the permission to ask a comprehensive set of questions if permitted.
Please continue.
Thank you. Representative Reagan, for this legislation, can you give examples of what type of student groups you're referencing or speakers that have been denied in public universities that would motivate that legislation? Have there been any recent examples that you can give us that motivated that provision?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Most recently, in the news at Stanford, a federal judge was shouted down by a student group, heckler's veto, since you asked.
Representative Jones?
Can you give an example of a public university in Tennessee which this law would apply to? I don't believe, unless I've changed residency, that this is the California legislature, that this applies to private schools. This is for public universities in Tennessee. Can you give an example in our own state where this happened?
There have been several. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. There have been several. However, I'm sorry you asked for a recent example. I gave it to you.
So is that a no? You can't give a recent example that it happened in Tennessee at a public university?
Yes, sir, I can. One comes to mind immediately at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which has been some time back, but there are examples in other places.
Representative Jones?
And what occurred at this example? Can you explain what happened? What group was denied? How they were denied? And why we need this provision in the law? Can you explain it? Or it seems like there's a
Excuse me, sir. Is this a cross-examination, or are you asking about the conduct of this bill? Because it can be proscriptive as well as reactive. And I would submit to you that proscriptive is fine. I'll choose that to go forward rather than waste time with the committee rehashing past events. It has happened. And if you haven't read the newspapers and kept up with it, I would submit to you, sir, that that's your problem, not mine.
Representative Jones?
Thank you. So the sponsor can't provide a recent example. My second question regards.
Excuse me, sir. I just gave you a recent example.
Point of order. You haven't been recognized by the speaker. This is my time. You haven't been recognized by the chair. Point of order.
All right, let's call a timeout.
Has he been recognized? Parliamentary inquiry. Has he been recognized?
Representative Jones, let's pause for a moment.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I engaged in running debate.
Thank you, Chairman Reagan. All right, Representative Jones, move on to your next question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My next question is in regards to the divisive concepts provision of your legislation. You say that this is about promoting free exchange of ideas and freedom of expression, and yet explicitly this is reinforcing and rehashing out types of education that we want to prohibit in a public university, not for elementary students, but for grown adults who are in college. Can you explain how that, can you reconcile that prohibition on certain types of education with calling it the Freedom of Expression Act, where you're prohibiting certain types of education from happening in a public university for adults in college?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I request to go out of session and have legal read the divisive concepts law, please, for the benefit.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Representative Jones, what is the question?
My parliamentary inquiry was, my question was for the sponsor. I don't need the legal to read the law. My question was, can he reconcile these divisive concepts being prohibited with the title of the bill, which is called the Freedom of Expression Act? My question is not going to be answered by legal reading the bill. My question is going to be asked by the sponsor, explaining how prohibiting certain types of education is reconciled with the title of this bill, which is called Freedom of Expression. And so my question is not for legal. And since I'm asking the question, I believe that it is up to the purview of the person asking the question to seek the answer from who they want it from, and not from Representative Reagan evading my question.
But we will take up the request from Chairman Reagan, the sponsor of the bill. Mr. Garrett, would you please answer the question Chairman Reagan referred to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Garrett, Legal Services. So I understand the question. You wanted to know what the list of prohibited concepts are?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Sorry for the delay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
The
sir.
prohibited concepts are those concepts specifically enumerated in section 49-6-1019. And I'll just read a portion of this. An LEA or public charter school shall not include or promote the following concepts as part of a course of instruction or in a curriculum or instructional program. That include, and there's other information there, that include or promote the following concepts. One race or sex inherently superior to another race or sex. Two, an individual by virtue of the individual race or sex is inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or subconsciously. Three, an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment because of the individual's race or sex. 4, an individual's moral character is determined by the individual's race or sex. 5, an individual by virtue of the individual's race or sex bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. 6, an individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or another form of psychological distress solely because of the individual's race or sex. 7, a meritocracy is inherently racist or sexist or designed by a particular race or sex to oppress members of another race or sex. 8, this state or the United States is fundamentally, irredeemably racist or sexist. There are 14. 9, promoting or advocating the violent overthrow of the United States government. 10, promoting division between or resentment of a race, sex, religion, creed, nonviolent, political affiliation, social class, or class of people. 11, ascribing character traits, values, moral or ethical codes, privileges, or beliefs to a race or sex, or to an individual because of the individual's race or sex. 12, the rule of law does not exist, but instead is a series of power relationships and struggles among racial or other groups. 13, all Americans are not created equal and are not endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Or 14, government should deny to any person within the government's jurisdiction the equal protection of the law.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Do you have a question for Mr. Garrett at this time, Representative Jones?
Yeah. Oh, yes, for Attorney Garrett. So these are each things that are prohibited. We cannot teach students about this under the law. Is that correct? These are things that we're censoring in education.
Mr. Garrett.
Doug Garrett with Legal again. Specifically, that section says an LEA or public charter school shall not include or promote the following concepts as a course of instruction or in a curriculum or instructional program, or allow teachers or other employees of the LEA or public charter school to use supplemental instructional materials that include or promote those concepts. That's the statutory.
It's for the sponsor.
Hold one. Chairman Reagan to Legal. Any questions?
Yes, sir. If possible, and since my colleague asked about prohibited concepts, I asked legal to read those. This bill is not about prohibited concepts. I would ask legal to read TCA 497-1903, please.
Mr. Garrett.
Wait, just have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Garrett with legal. Section 49-7-1903 states that in furtherance of the General Assembly's findings in 49-7-1901, which pertain to the legislative findings that the General Assembly finds that diverse concepts exacerbate and inflame divisions on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin, and other criteria in ways contrary to the unity of the United States of America and the well-being of this state and its citizens. Now I'm going to go back to 1903. The following restrictions apply to public institutions of higher education in this state. A student or employee of a public institution of higher education shall not be penalized, discriminated against, or receive any adverse treatment due to the student's or employee's refusal to support, believe, endorse, embrace, confess, act upon, or otherwise assent to one or more divisive concepts. 2, a student or employee of a public institution of higher education shall not be required to endorse a specific ideology or political viewpoint to be eligible for hiring, tenure, promotion, or graduation. An institution shall not ask the ideological or political viewpoint of a student, job applicant, job candidate, or candidate for promotion or tenure. And 3, an individual who believes that a violation of this section has occurred may pursue all equitable or legal remedies that may be available to the individual in a court of competent jurisdiction.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Chairman Reagan, any question further of legal?
No, thank you. I think legal has sufficiently defined the differences in between prohibited concepts and divisive concepts, and this bill is about divisive concepts. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Jones for legal, please. Anything?
For the sponsor.
Any questions for legal? Representative Hakeem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The section that, Mr. Attorney, as you read about public and charter schools, this in the code, was that related to originally K through 12?
Mr. Garrett, when you find it.
It is? And I'm asking a question.
Yeah. Doug
We're
Garrett.
transfer.
Sorry, go ahead.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. We're transferring what we had in there for K through 12 to our colleges. That's the effort. Is that correct?
Mr. Garrett.
Representative Hakeem, I'm going to have to look at that in a little more detail here real quick.
Okay. Okay. I do have a few other questions.
Representative Hakeem, you want to pause while he
Okay,
gets
okay.
caught up there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's fine.
Okay, it's Mr. Garrett is a multitasker. Ask your next question, Representative Hakeem.
Okay. Well, I hear the term divisive concepts. I find it somewhat of a misnomer in title. I guess, do we have to accept that concept as far as a divisive concept?
Parliamentary inquiry.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, I
members.
don't think it's appropriate for the sponsor to tell the
Wait,
chair
wait,
to
wait.
how to rule on a ruling. I think that's a
Representative,
conflict.
just, let's hit the pause button again, because some members on this committee are new, and we're talking about things that were already placed into statute. And so and that's what we're trying to circle around. What is currently in statute, but specifically, what is House Bill 1376 is about? And I will pause with legal at this time, go to Chairman Reagan and what he's hearing, or Mr. Garrett, I guess you're ready for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Garrett. I just wanted to clarify in response to Representative Hakim's first question. That may be more a question of intent that the sponsor may be able to answer. My office does not speculate as to legislative intent, so that may be better guided toward
Right.
the.
So do we
Sponsor.
need members at this time to go back in or back into session and then take up the discussion with Chairman Reagan on the bill? Or do we have still some questions of Mr. Garrett? Representative Hakeem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just ask one additional question. And I want to apologize to you, Mr. Garrett, Mr. Attorney, but can this bill, would you consider it legal? Or how would that be determined?
Mr. Garrett, if you would like to respond.
Thank you, Doug Garrett with legal. Representative Hakeem, I would have to look at that to determine the legality and constitutionality of this specific bill. I don't know whether this issue's been litigated or to what extent it's been litigated in the past, but if you don't mind, I'd like to take a look at that and get back to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any further questions for legal? If not, let's go back into session. Chairman Reagan, I'll let you respond first, and then we'll go back to Representative Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question was raised concerning prohibited concepts versus divisive concepts, which is why I asked for legal to read both sections of the law so that we are clear that we're talking about divisive concepts, which was passed as part of Chapter 49, Chapter 7, Part 19. And again, for the benefit of the discussion, divisive concepts are in fact what is intended to be addressed by this bill. Specifically, freedom of expression and inquiry at public institutions of higher education is indispensable. This bill basically ensures that freedom of expression and the debates and discussions that go with that are not encumbered by forced adherence to those divisive concepts. The idea straightforwardly is that debate should be unrestricted without any sort of indoctrination or pressure. Additionally, this bill ensures that institutional transparency concerning that 49.7-103 will limit the risk or potential risk of diminished excellence from our great institutions. It also specifies that public medical institutions of higher education best serve the state when providing meritorious education and training that positions future healthcare positions to serve professionals to serve all patients adequately and to the best of their ability. Again, the idea being that divisive concepts have no place in educating the best of the best.
Okay, this time, Representative Jones, I'm going to let you ask one question. I've got several other members that want to ask questions as well. Representative Jones.
Thank you. And the sponsor was able to filibuster my questions by going illegal, but it's okay. I'll finish with this question because he just read the same thing that he read at the beginning from the paper, which is ridiculous and not critical thinking. And we're trying to limit critical thinking of students at college campuses. And so this bill would allow students to report violations of divisive concepts to the administration, so to report faculty members. This is creating a rogue system that will allow students to target faculty for teaching, what Chairman Reagan calls divisive concepts, but which we know are critical thinking and are things that to give an alternative viewpoint of America. So my question is this, to Representative Reagan: you were born 1948 in North Carolina in a segregated society. How would you teach that under this law? Your upbringing in segregation, where Black students were actually prohibited in a divided America from entering into certain establishments. How would you teach that if not divisive? The society you grew up in, and that Representative Keesling grew up in, and Representative Carr grew up in, where people like me couldn't even sit at a table like this. How would you teach that under this law that is against divisive concepts when we lived in a divided America that many of you still want us to live in?
Okay, Chairman Reagan, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And contrary to the gentleman's assertion, I graduated from an integrated high school in Western North Carolina. So I grew up in an integrated society, contrary to your assertion.
Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm thinking about the reason we go to college is to learn and discuss and debate these controversial issues. We're talking about adults here. Why are we limiting having these discussions and learning from others, regardless of what side you're on? I cannot believe we are trying to limit discussions that are critical to our community and moving forward. I think that it's frightening what we're doing here. And certainly the folks I have talked to at the University of Tennessee are not supportive of this legislation.
Thank you. Next, we will move to Representative Kumar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This is an important discussion, but it's a very sensitive discussion too, and we are a small group here. Divisive concepts are not constructive. They are not going to help and improve our society. It's a tragedy in our nation that you can have a young person come across a difficult circumstance, difficult life. They can go two ways from that point on. They can seek help. They can work hard. They can pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They can use all the resources available today in America and overcome those circumstances and difficulties and be a hero of their dreams, at least. On the other hand, you can take the same circumstances and claim tragedy, claim victimhood, blame society, blame America. And where are we going with this? Are these concepts that we want to teach our children? Are they good for our children? Where are children going to be if they're told from the very beginning that you poor thing, you've had a hard time and you were discriminated and mistreated by America? That's not my America, really. Using these divisive concepts, free speech has really been trampled in many college institutions. Salman Rushdie was stabbed, right? And now, are we going to wait until something tragic happens here in Tennessee before passing a legislation like this? And I think what happened today in our city is actually, and on that same day, we are passing a law for school security. It speaks for it that we have to act and not wait, not say that this has not happened in Tennessee, so let us not do it. The teaching of young minds with divisive concepts is really, really harmful, and it is going to hurt those young people and hurt America. To say that America is fundamentally, inherently, and irredeemably racist is not the reality today. It is certainly, there was a time, it is a part of history. But today's America, if it's not good enough, let's work to make it better. Let's join together rather than continue to criticize America and keep on running it down. My experience is really totally different. It is how you approach. You can take the similar circumstances of our vice president, okay? Immigrant parents came here, got schooling, went on to be an attorney general, on to vice president, and senator really achieved a lot. To her, America is racist. You can take the experience of Nikki Haley, immigrant parents, got educated here, yes, in the Carolinas, came across some difficult circumstances, overcame them, and went on to serve in a way that, isn't that fantastic that she can run for president in America? Really, let us work together to make it better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Kumar. Representative Hakeem, I've got you next on my list, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start out, if I may. You know, it seems as though it depends on who you are as to what you can say and be, you know, off the bill or out of turn. When the vice president of the United States is considered, what was the term? Was it racist? Or what? I mean, unreal. And then when we talk about freedom of expression, to me, it's a contradiction by limiting discussion among adults on a college campus. I mean, are we going to deal with reality or a world that we want to create that does not deal with reality? There are countries who want to destroy America. I don't care if you talk about China, Russia, or whatever. But instead of trying to find ways of working together, you have to talk about what has happened and what is happening. And my God, we don't want to have a discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm very troubled by the statements of Representative Kumar, who, if it was not for the civil rights movement and the struggle of Black Americans, would not be able to sit here as an immigrant from. If it was not for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, if it was not for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and so though he espouses the rhetoric of white supremacy, if it was up to no struggle, he would not even be on this dais. And so I'm going to be real today, because this is so insulting to people of color to tell us that there was no racism in this country, to tell us that there was no history of struggle in this country, to tell us that we can't even teach college students about this. I mean, this is so shameful that we're sitting up here and we have members of this body smiling when Representative Kumar said that, because they were happy a brown face was saying it instead of a white face. It is shameful. And so my question to the sponsor is this: prohibiting concepts that can be taught in America prohibiting concepts that are not favorable to America does not sound American to me. This sounds like a patriotic type of education out here in China, where you can't criticize the government. And so you're making us enforce in law that we cannot teach a critical view of America because it's seen as divisive. How is this American to you, to teach about only the good part of America, but not to teach about the undershadows of America? That does not seem American to me. This seems like a violation of free expression. This seems like a violation of critical thinking that our universities are beacons of. And so how do you reconcile this with the American idea that we hope is America, where we can have a free exchange of ideas, where we can talk about all things? You can even burn the flag if you want in America, because we say we're free.
Chairman Reagan, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there's a lot in that question. I would point out to the gentleman who asked the question, in his prologue, he cited the Civil Rights Act and so forth. I would ask who passed that, because according to him at that time, there were no blacks able to vote for it. So it must have been the white supremacists that passed that, by his logic. I would also ask him about Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, or Dr. Ben Carson, or Nikki Haley was mentioned, or Colin Powell, or even Barack Obama, who was a black president. If racism is endemic in this country, how could those and hundreds of others have achieved what they achieved? Contrary to the assertions that are made here, what this bill is about is, in fact, ensuring that freedom of expression exists, because the institution cannot suppress the views that are contrary to that which they wish to indoctrinate. This is about promoting and defending the freedom of expression and inquiry, not allowing it to be suppressed.
Representative Littleton? Question's been called. Any objection? All right, let's take the vote.
Can
we make?
Can we have a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Clerk, please take the roll call on previous question.
Representatives Bolso.
Yes.
Bolso votes aye. Carr. Carr votes aye. Chisholm. Chisholm votes no. Clemmons.
No.
Clemmons votes no. Crawford. Crawford votes aye. Eldridge. Eldridge votes aye. Faison. Hakeem.
No.
Hakeem votes no. Haynes. Haynes votes aye. Himmer. Himmer votes no. Johnson.
No, because we force babies to have babies, but we can't allow adults to discuss tough issues.
Johnson votes no. Jones.
No, this is a totalitarian bill, and we should be ashamed to vote for this. I vote no.
Sorry. Kiesling.
Aye.
Kiesling votes aye. Kumar. Kumar votes aye. Lafferty. Littleton. Littleton votes aye. Martin. Martin votes aye. McCalman.
Aye.
McCalman votes aye. Rudder. Rudder votes aye. Vice Chairman Reedy. Vice Chairman Reedy votes aye. Reagan.
Aye.
Reagan votes aye. Mr. Chairman, you have 12 ayes and 6 noes.
Previous question prevails. Voting on the bill, House Bill 1376, positive recommendation. Moving to calendar and rules. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, nay.
Hell no.
Please let the clerk know if you want to be listed as a no. Chairman Reagan, the committee is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that brings us back to the last item on the calendar, which was just debated. Do we have other issues to come before us? We have a motion to adjourn, which is non-debatable. We are adjourned.